Are you recording? Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. Heard it was a great Shabbos there. So I'm glad to hear that. Amazing. Okay. Let me just open my notes here and we'll jump right back in. So what we were talking about last week as we finished up the Path of the Just for the week was the fact that, as the Ramchal describes it, we are engaged in a constant battle. That life is a constant battle, a war and a war that we have to be consistently and constantly engaged in. And if we succeed and we fight and we're victorious, then we will have the opportunity to achieve the goal of that we've been talking about since the beginning of this book, the goal of what's called Dveikus. Dveikus is that special connection, that awareness, living with a God connection and awareness at all times. So that was what he was saying. And if you look now, we are the page one. We are on page 29. Page 29. And it says over here, V'im tamik od be'inyan. If you delve more deeply into this matter. So, as some of you have heard Rabbi Akiva Tatz speak before, one of the great things about Rabbi Akiva Tatz is so he's a very deep thinker and speaker. And whenever he speaks, he always says something that's like so deep, you can't believe how deep it was. And he goes, now let's go a little bit deeper. And you're like, no, not deeper. I can't take it anymore, right? So what the Ramchal is telling us with these three words, V'im tamik od be'inyan, these four words, if you delve more deeply into the matter, he's saying, basically telling us kind of some people might treat this as a throwaway line. I actually think this is a very, very important line in this book. And he's saying we should never be satisfied with a surface understanding of things. We always have to look deeply. If we want to understand something, if we want to truly grasp an idea, and especially one that's relatively complicated, we have to be willing to think deeply. We have to be able to, create new ways of thinking and understanding. And that's what he's telling us over here. You got to go deeper in this topic. If you want to really understand what it's all about, you got to go deeper. Don't be satisfied with the surface understanding. And here's what he's going to say. Listen to where he takes this. So if you delve a little deeper into the matter, you will see that the entire world was created for the use of man. Okay, what does this mean? So this means that Hashem created the world and everything in it for the purpose of human beings, and ultimately, and more specifically, for the purpose of human beings being able to connect to Hashem. And therefore, everything in the world is a big stage. Everything Hashem created in the world exists for one purpose, and that is to help us, human beings, get closer to Hashem, either by using these particular things, whatever they might be, or maybe by choosing to avoid using them and to stay away from them. But everything you see in the world, and by the way, not just everything, but everyone, every person, and every situation, and every event, and everything that happens in history. You have to ask yourself when you pick up the news after Shabbos and you see that there were terrible tornadoes that ravaged Kentucky and Western Kentucky and Illinois. You have to, and that, I don't know, the number I saw was 84, maybe it's more now. You have to ask and wonder and try to understand, why do things like this happen? What's going on? What's the message? What am I supposed to take away from this? How am I supposed to grow from this or move forward from this experience? So everything that happens in history, everything that happens in our lives as individuals, it's all there as opportunities for us to connect more deeply. There's a famous statement in the Jerusalem Talmud that says that ultimately, it says, I'll read you the quote first, Atid, in the future, ultimately, when a person leaves this world, Adam litain din v'cheshbon, a person is going to be held accountable a person's going to have to give some kind of, accounting or reckoning. I'll call Masha Rasa Eno Velo Achal. For everything that you saw, everything that your eyes saw and you didn't try. Eat, taste, literally is what it says. Now, obviously, there's limitations to this. This is not talking about, things that we're not allowed to eat, things that are not kosher, for example, right? But the message over here is a clear one, that Hashem created a beautiful, delicious world with all sorts of delicacies and pleasures and beautiful things and beautiful experiences. And he did so for our pleasure. And he wants us to experience these things and to taste these things, right? And therefore we have to do our best to try to, take advantage of all the wonder and beauty and splendor that Hashem built into the world and enjoy them. Okay. And by the way, almost every taste that's out there, the Talmud says that any taste that's out there, like a forbidden taste, like non-kosher foods or whatever, there is a permissible version of it somewhere. Whether we've discovered it or not, remains to be seen. By the way, Beyond Burger is not a substitute for a good cheeseburger. I remember what cheeseburgers taste like, and Beyond Burger with a little bit of cheese on it is not going to get you even close. But that's not the point. The point is that Hashem created a beautiful world with beautiful things. He wants us to enjoy them because they are there for us to connect back to the source, and then ultimately to be able to connect closer to Hashem. So everything that Hashem creates in the world is there for us to connect to Him. Does anyone have any thoughts or examples? I kind of thought I would throw it out there. And someone have an example of something, something in the world. Hi, Sharon, good to see you. Something in the world like that's out there, a pleasure that's really, if you understand it and understand how to use it, is really there for us to connect closer to Hashem. Steve, you're unmuting. Let's hear.
I'm going to say beef fry.
Beef fry. And the survey says, ding, 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 500. Right, beef fry. Right, that's a good example. Beef fry. What's that? Where did that come from? Right, that's Hashem saying, okay, here's something that's maybe not quite the real deal, but pretty close. Right, you can have a bacon burger with beef fry. Okay, all the pleasures in the world are there for us to enjoy. Now, take another step over here and look what he says. And as a result of this, the world, in fact, stands in a great balance. Okay, that's what he says. It's Amnam hinehu omed b'shikul gadol. The world is in a great shikul. A shikul is a balance. What does the word shikul sound like to you?
Equal.
Well, okay, that's true. It rhymes with equal. What Hebrew word does shikul sound like? Shekel. Shekel. Shin kuf lamed, right? What is a shekel? A shekel is a coin. Why is a shekel called a coin? Because in biblical times, the way that you would create coinage is you would weigh them on a scale against a certain, against the gold or whatever it was. And that was called shekel. So shekel means a balance, to be weighed out, to be balanced. So he says the whole world stands b'shikul gadol, in a great balance. For if man is drawn after the physical elements of the world and is distanced from his creator, he becomes degraded. Let's just pause there. Okay, don't go on past there. That if a person, let's just take first step one. Step one is if a person is drawn after the physical enticements of the world and is distanced as a result from his creator, that person becomes diminished, degraded. He's mitkalkel. He becomes weakened. He becomes less. He becomes further away from achieving his purpose in this world. He becomes, diminished is probably the best word I can think of. So let me explain what's going on here, because this is a very fundamental idea in this book and in Judaism and moving forward. The idea is basically that when our neshamos, your neshama, my neshama, when our souls were in the Garden of Eden, where they came from, where they originated from, before they entered into our bodies, before they were sent down into this world. Okay, in that state that our souls were in prior to entering into this world, in that place, your neshama, you could experience a life of 100% total ruchniut, spirituality. That's what existence was for your soul before it entered into this world. Pure ruchniut, pure spirituality. But as soon as your neshama comes down here into this world and is joined with and enters into a body, at that point, 100% spiritual living is no longer a possibility. You can't live any longer without eating and drinking and sleeping. And you can't sustain your species any longer without procreating. So once the soul leaves the spiritual realm and comes into the physical world, the possibility now for pure spiritual living is no longer a possibility. Okay, but the problem is, or the challenge is, that your neshama only craves spirituality. There's no physical pleasure in this world that your neshama benefits direct benefit from, that your neshama derives direct benefit from. Right? So, but now that it's in a body, in your body, so now you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to drink, you have to procreate. Okay, so Hashem put us in a situation where he took our pure souls, which love spirituality, and he put us in a world, in a physical world where we can't not be participating. You can't, as a human being, 100% avoid the physical world. If you do, you will die very quickly, right? If you a few days without eating and drinking, you're gone. So that's not an option. So not participating at all in the physical world is not an option. So the question, sorry? Oh, so the only question then becomes, right, how much? How much do I engage in the physical world? When do I engage in the physical world? How do I physically, what perspective do I bring into my relationship with the physical world? These are the questions of life. To avoid physicality entirely, it's not an option. Your neshama would love that, but it's not an option anymore now that your neshama is in this physical world. But what is up to you, and what we have to get straight and what we have to figure out is, how much do I participate in the physical world? When do I partake in the physical world? What's my perspective when I'm involved in my physical needs? Okay, so this is the challenge of life. Spirituality, physicality, the balance, the challenge. Judaism really, in a nutshell, is really just about one thing. It's about learning how to get this balance right. It's about learning how to get the challenge of physicality right. The challenge of physicality is the challenge of life. The challenge of physicality is I can't live in a purely spiritual realm anymore now that my soul's down here in the body. I have to be involved in the physical world. But how? What's the right way? And all of Judaism, and really all of halakha, all of Jewish law, is really just really only about this one thing, helping us to navigate through the maze of this physical spiritual challenge. Okay, everything we do is all of halakha, all of Jewish law is about infusing spirituality into our physical, mundane acts of physical survival. Okay, so that we don't just become pure animals living to survive, living to indulge, living to gratify our physical needs. Okay, that's what an animal does. But a person can't live like that. And all of halacha, I wrote 4 examples. Kashrut. What's kashrut? Kashrut is to teach me how to be disciplined, how to be able to train myself that there's some things that I do eat and that there's some things that I don't eat. It's to guide me, to train me to understand that just like my body has physical needs that when it comes to food, so too my soul has particular needs when it comes to food. And the foods that I eat will have an impact my spirituality, and they'll impact my connection to Hashem. So the laws of kashrus are not just some random list of laws about what you can and can't eat, and they're also not about cleanliness and about trigonosis or whatever. They're about trying to help me navigate the challenge of the physical spiritual dichotomy of life. Brachot, also the blessings that we make, right? We walk around making blessings all day long, but think about it. Every time I'm about to enjoy something in the physical world, I have a choice now. Do I ravenously eat, fresh whatever it is that I'm, is it just about me fressing on this food? Or is it about me somehow using this opportunity to connect to Hashem? With a simple bracha, I take the food that is just food, and I now create it into a spiritual act of eating. That's what a bracha is all about. Taharas mishpacha, the tahar mishpacha, the family purity laws, right? There's no area in life where we're more susceptible to failing the physical spiritual challenge than sexuality, right? Sexuality is where the great ones fall. Okay, and what is tahar mishpacha, family purity laws? It's all about learning how to use and utilize and partake and involve in sexuality with your spouse in the right way, at the right time, for the right reasons, and with the right perspective, so that you take something which could be purely physical and you infuse it with a connection to Hashem, and it elevates you. Shabbos is probably the ultimate example. All the things that we do on Shabbos to help us to connect to Hashem through the physical world. Okay, so really, if you ask me, what is Jewish law all about? What is halacha all about? It's a pathway to guide us towards success in the challenge of life. What is the challenge of life? How and when and with what perspective do I engage in the physical world now that I understand that I'm not just a pure spiritual soul like I was before I entered into this world. I'm a soul and a body. And if I'm a soul and a body, I got to be in this world. How? What's the right way? How do I not let it overcome me? How do I not let the waves of my physical drives crash over me and overcome me and take over my life? We all sadly have known people in our lives who have been addicts, right? An addict is a very, very scary thing. An addict, is a person who some physical drive or need or desire or impulse may have started off as like a little curiosity or whatever, takes them over to the point where they are a total, complete slave to that physical drive, and they have no control over their lives anymore. It's one of the saddest things in the world to see, but it's very easy. It's very easy for that to happen. So we all know people that have had addictions. So, and it's one of the hardest things to beat in life too. So that is the challenge of life that Ramchal is telling us. That's the war. And if we fail and we let the physicality of life overtake us, and we become distant from our creator, and we become degraded or diminished in the process. So that's what the Ramchal is telling us all about here in the beginning. It's impossible not to be engaged in this physical world. Hashem set up the world this way. We aren't allowed to live alone as Jews in the middle of a desert. We are obligated to try to get married if we can, to try to have children if we can, to be part of a community, to do chesed, the acts of kindness for other people. A Jew can't live off the grid in total isolation, in some mountain somewhere. That's why COVID has been very, very difficult for Jewish communities, because we don't live that way. We live with other people. We live on the grid, on the map of physicality. So now, as the Ramchal says, who omeid b'shikul gadol. He's in a big shikul, he's standing in a great balance. Do I let the physicality of life take me over? Do I let my physical drives lead me? Or do I control them? Do I let my neshama call the shots, or do I let my body call the shots? There are great examples of this throughout Jewish history of the great tzaddikim who really mastered this, who really worked hard on these things. The giants of Musar, for example, the Musar giants, they're the ones who really worked on this and wrote about this. I'll give you one example. There was a great Rabbi, his name was Chatzka Levenstein. He was the mashkiach, the spiritual mentor, let's say, in the famous Mir yeshiva in Europe before the war, in the city of Mir in Belarus. My father, I don't know if he remembers, but we went trekking through the cemetery in the middle of the night in this little town called Mir in Belarus and we found the grave of this great tzaddik, Reb Chatzka Levenstein. So Reb Chatzka Levenstein was known to be a person who had total control over his physical desires. And he used to decide before he would sit down to eat a meal, he would decide based on how hungry he was, based on his awareness of his own physical needs and his body and this amount of strength that he needed and the tasks that were ahead of him for the day. He calculated exactly how much he needed to eat. Let's say today I need to eat for breakfast 2 slices of bread and 2 eggs. And that's what he calculated in the cucumber. He calculated that. And if that's what he calculated, then when he had the 2 slices of bread and the 2 eggs and the cucumber, he stopped eating no matter what. And at that point, he would say, if I feel hungry, I'm not hungry. That's just my Yetzer Hara. That's just the illusion inside of me. That's just my physical drive trying to get me to eat more than I need to eat. Right? So he had the total control. His seichel ruled over his goof. Okay? And that's the ultimate way that a Jew needs to live. Hashem created us in a world where there's so much physical pleasure, so much to be enjoyed. Food tastes really good, right? Sexuality feels incredible. Sleep is very enjoyable. So we have to be very, very careful. We have no choice but to engage in food and sexuality and drink. But the challenge is, how do we avoid letting it take us over? Okay. The question is not whether or not we engage. The challenge is, if you're alive, then you eat and you sleep and you procreate. All right. And eating and sleeping and procreating feel really good. So the question is, do I do it l'shem shamayim? Do I do it as a way to bring me closer to Hashem? Or do I allow it to pull me further away from my purpose in this world? Do I sleep because it feels good? Or do I sleep because I know that I want to have a strong, healthy body tomorrow morning so I can wake up with energy to serve my Creator another day, to do another act of chesed, to pray again, to put on my tefillin, to eat something kosher, whatever it is, to serve Hashem and do His mitzvahs? Or do I sleep, because if sleeping feels good? And what's the difference, by the way? The difference may be how much you sleep. Maybe you calculate. Rav Noach Weinberg, who I quote all the time, used to tell us, figure out how much sleep your body needs. Everybody needs a different amount of sleep. Some people need 8 hours of sleep at night. Some people need 4 hours of sleep a night. Figure out how much sleep your body needs, and then give it that much sleep. Don't give it a minute less than it needs, because then you won't be functioning well and you won't be optimal. And don't give it a minute more than it needs, because then you're just indulging your taiva. Figure out how much your body needs to sleep and sleep that amount. Okay. And sleep for the right reason. Go to sleep at night because you want to wake up in the morning strong and ready to serve your Creator. Do I eat? Do I eat because I'm a foodie and I love to eat? Or do I eat because I want to do mitzvahs? In order to do mitzvahs, I need to have energy. I want to serve Hashem. I want to do chesed. And I need to have energy for that. So therefore I need to eat. And by the way, it's going to make a difference, obviously, regarding what I eat and how much I eat and the types of food I eat. If I'm eating so that I can be strong and healthy to serve my Creator and to do good things and to make people's lives better, then I'm going to eat the right things and the right amount of things. But if I'm eating because I'm a foodie and I love to eat, I'm going to eat whatever I need to eat to indulge myself. So our neshamas have no physical pleasure whatsoever from food and sleep and sex. That's all our body. So the question just becomes, who's leading? Who's making the decisions? And that is this shikul. That is this great balance of life, right? What's the Ramchal saying? He's saying, live a life, a weighed shikul, shekel, a weighed or measured, a balanced, weighed and measured life. Live a measured life. Enjoy great food. Enjoy great l'chaims. But don't do it every day, right? Do it on Shabbos. And even on Shabbos, do I eat all the herring and whiskey I could possibly stuff into my mouth? Yes. But should I eat all the herring and whiskey I can possibly stuff into my mouth? Maybe, probably not. Okay. What is Shabbos all about? Does Shabbos become about the daven? Is it become about the babka and the kishki, or is it about the davening and the learning? And I give myself some little additional physical pleasures also to get into it, to get excited about it. Okay, this is all part of what we call the milchama, the war that we're fighting. How much to indulge, how much to enjoy the physical world. The thing is that's interesting is that, and this is the problem. Herein lies the problem, and this is something that my Rabbi Noach Weinberg used to say also. He used to say it like this basically. He said, you know what he would say? He'd say to his students, he'd say, you know what? The whole world is crazy. The world out there is crazy. Then he said, but you know what? We're also crazy. Meaning like us sitting in the yeshiva. The whole world is crazy, but we're also crazy. And then he says, so what's the difference? What's the difference? The whole world is crazy. Everyone out there, they're all crazy, but we're also crazy. Everyone sitting in this yeshiva, we're also crazy. What's the difference? He used to say, the difference is that we know we're crazy. We know we're crazy, right? We know that we live in a world of illusion, that we falsify things for ourselves all the time. We live in a world of insanity, but we who learn Ramchal, who learn wisdom, who learn how to navigate about challenges of life, we know we're crazy. So most people, the sad thing is that most people don't even know that this is the challenge of life. Most people are not even aware of the fact that the challenge of life is getting the physical, spiritual balance right. People don't understand that. They don't even understand that there's any value in holding back. Basically, if I can afford it, okay, and I can do it, and it's legal, or even if it's not legal, but I can get away with doing it and not get caught, then go for it, do it. But the Ramchal is telling us, no, be measured, think about it. It's not just about don't let the physical drives overtake you. Let your seichel, let your neshama call the shots and determine and decide. Now, are we Chatzkel Levensteins? No. Are we Rav Noach Weinbergs? No. But I will remind you of two words that we pointed out last week and when we talked about, when we were learning the Ramchal. The two words, my two favorite words in this book, Kafi Hashiur, which means, in English, to the degree that, ... That's something that we're going to have to remind ourselves 1,000 times as we learn this book. Because ultimately, as we get further and further into this book, it gets higher and higher. The levels and the expectations that are going to be put forward become even higher.
Rabbi David, I accidentally muted you when I was letting Doris back in.
That's fine.
You got to go back about 90 seconds. Sorry about that.
Okay. Going back 90 seconds is that the beautiful thing is that the Ramchal told us last week, it's all to the degree, meaning we don't have, it's not all or nothing. This is not all, just everything in this book is not all or nothing. So too, it's not all or nothing. Either I'm a tzaddik and I live a perfectly measured, balanced life where everything I put into my mouth and every time I engage in any form of physical pleasure, whether it's sexuality or it's sleep or it's eating or it's drinking, it's calculated, it's planned out. We don't have to live like that, but we can incorporate these ideas on some level in our lives by just being aware of this and wanting to grow in these areas of the challenge of the physical, spiritual challenge of life already puts us way ahead of the game. Like Rav Noach would say, the world is crazy, but you're also crazy. We're also crazy. What's the difference? We know we're crazy. So just knowing that this challenge exists, knowing that the challenge of life is the physical, spiritual challenge of life is the first step. So maybe I can make do with a little bit less. Right? If I go out 3 nights a week for dinner, maybe I can go out 2 nights a week for dinner. If I have 2 drinks every night before, at 5 o'clock, maybe I can have 1.5, or make if the pours are 3 fingers, maybe it could be a 2-finger pour. Okay, I'm not trying to, deprive anyone of their, what gets them, excited, but maybe we can in certain areas of our lives. I made a decision today. Hey, Melissa, I made a decision today. Okay, it was a big decision, but I decided, and you can, anyone who wants to can check in with me in a week on this and see if I'm still doing it. I am not going to honk my horn in Israel, and I'm not going to honk my horn unless there's a safety. But the real reason for horns is safety, right? If somebody's backing up and they're about to back into you, you honk so that they don't back into you, or if they're about to hit something, whatever. But in Israel, a horn is a way of telling somebody what you want them to do and where you want them to go, or that you're annoyed at them, whatever. And trust me, as frustrating as driving can be anywhere that you've ever been in your life, it's 1,000 times more frustrating in Israel. What do drivers do in Israel? It is mind-boggling. I've seen people make U-turns on highways, stuff that you can't even imagine, right? And your first reaction is, "You idiot," right? But I just said, okay, you know what? I'm working on myself. I didn't come to Israel to be filled with rage. I didn't come to Israel to become an anti-Semite, right? I came to Israel to try to become a better spiritual person. So I'm not honking my horn unless there's an issue, a safety issue. Okay, but we have to pick areas where we want to try to grow, and then just ask ourselves questions. Do I need this, right? Can I make do with a little bit less? So rule number one of this war that the Ramchal is describing here is know that you're in it. Know that you're fighting this war. At least have the awareness that life is a battle between our physical drives and our spiritual drives. And have that awareness and understand that. And that's a huge part of fighting the battle.
David?
Yes,
Can I
Jeffrey.
ask a question? It gets confusing because people just give these like aphorisms out of context. So I've heard the first thing Hashem's going to ask you, did you conduct your business ethically? Or he's going to ask you, or the divine court, did you enjoy the pleasures of life that I provided for you? So this is it gets to be a little subtle. I'm a little bit of a black and white person. That if there's a war going on, the idea is that a lot of these things are the enemy to a certain extent. Not necessarily the first thing Hashem's going to ask you was, did you enjoy the pleasures of life? They would say, how did you do in the war with your Yetzer Hara? So can you clear it up? I mean, why do people say these things, or have I misinterpreted it? This whole thing about being asked about pleasure, the first thing out when you're judged.
It's the Talmud tells us explicitly that there are 6 questions that a person is asked when they come to the world to come. And the very first one is asakta, nasata v'nasata be'emunah. Did you conduct your business affairs faithfully? And why that's the first question, there's a lot of discussion about that. Basically, a person who conducts their business affairs honestly is a person that lives with, it's the greatest indicator that they have emunah, because if they don't have emunah, if they don't live with the reality of Hashem in the world and running the world, then whatever you can get away with, you'll do, right? So if a person conducts their business faithfully with emunah, then it shows a lot about where they're starting off. What's their baseline? Is their baseline that they understand that there's a God in this world, that there are moral expectations that are placed upon human beings, and that's just a baseline. That is like the most fundamental. And if the answer is that this person was honest in business, or to the degree that they were honest in business, it's a pretty good indicator, because if you can get away with something and no one's going to catch you and you still don't do it, that's because you accept that there's something called morality in this world. Well, if we're just animals, like advanced animals, no one gets outraged when a lion attacks a kangaroo in the jungle, right? Because animals don't have moral expectations. So why do human beings have moral expectations? If there's moral expectations, it must be that there's a higher authority that expects something from human beings that goes beyond what it expects from animals. So it's a fundamental baseline indicator that a person accepts morality and belief in Hashem when they conduct their business affairs faithfully. That's why that's the first question. Okay, I want to tackle. We have, let's say, 10 more minutes. I want to tackle one more topic, one more half of a line over here, and then we'll leave some time for questions. So let's just read what we wrote. Let's just say what we've read so far today. So if you delve into this matter further, literally ta'amik, if you go more deeply, if you delve a little bit more deeply into this matter, you always have to delve deep. You can't accept things on the surface. Things are never, especially in Judaism, things are never what they seem to be. You got to go deeper. So if you go deeper, you'll see that the entire world was created for the use of man. And as a result of this, the world stands in a great balance. For if man is drawn after the physical enticements of the world and is distanced from his creator, he becomes degraded. That's what we got up to until now. And the next few words in the Ramchal are shocking. He's about to reveal something huge to us, which is going to rock your world, or it should at least rock your world. I remember it rocked my world the first time I saw it, okay? And that is that if you become involved and engaged and overcome by the physical enticements of the world, and as a result, you become distanced from your creator, and then he becomes degraded, ready, here we go, and degrades the world with him. Meaning, okay, what the Ramchal is telling us is that up until now, up until that line, what the Ramchal was saying is that if a person isn't careful and a person is not diligent and not living a weighed, measured life and doesn't engage and fight the battle, the physical, spiritual battle, and he ends up getting drawn after the physicality and the light and the purity of his neshama becomes compromised. That's what he said up until now. But then he takes it a step further and says, but get ready, there's something else. He doesn't just destroy himself in the process. He brings the whole world down with him. He brings the whole world down with him, which means that no human being lives in a vacuum. And that means that we're all interconnected, and our actions and our thoughts and our words, positive or negative in nature, affect the amount of godliness that is currently at any moment penetrating into the physical world. So my positive thoughts, my positive words, and my positive actions open up windows, open up portals where godliness flows into the world. The world becomes a more godly place, more permeated with spirituality, and then everybody and everything in the world is elevated. And if, God forbid, I have negative thoughts and negative words and negative actions, that doesn't just affect me or the person that I'm directly impacting. It closes these apertures, the windows close, and it becomes more opaque, and less godliness is able to penetrate the world. And when less godliness is able to penetrate the world, the whole world becomes less spiritual. Okay, I'll give you. I saw a good mushal, a good parable for this. That it's a little bit crude and a little bit morbid. But it illustrates the point that if there was a person that was wanting to kill himself, the person was deciding that they wanted to commit suicide, God forbid, right? And they lived in an apartment building, let's say, with 25 units in the apartment building. The person's trying to decide how to kill himself, and he comes up with the idea that what he's going to do is he's going to kill himself with cyanide. But he doesn't want to just eat the cyanide because he doesn't, what he's going to do is going to put it in his water. So he decides to go out to the water main in the building, the main that comes into the building, and put the cyanide in the pipe in the build that comes into the building, and that's how he's going to take his life. Well, what's going to happen? He's going to take his life, but he's also going to take the life of everybody else in the building, all the different units in the apartment building. Okay, which means that human beings, not animals, not plants, not cats, not dogs, but human beings, we are like the water main of the world. Okay, so whatever goes into us and whatever affects us affects everything above us and below us, in the more spiritual world and in the more physical world, because we're a combination of physical and spiritual. Everything else that exists is either all spiritual or all physical. So our positive thoughts, our positive words, our positive actions, not only do they create an obvious and direct impact on somebody. If I say a kind word to you, you feel better. Now you go and you say, pay it forward and say something nice to the next person, and you can create a domino effect of goodness and kindness. That's all true, but that's not even what the Ramchal is talking about. Indirectly, our positive thoughts, words, and actions bring the whole world up. And our negative thoughts, words, and actions, when we get fully engaged and when we lose the battle, when we forget the battle of life, when we get sucked into the physical drives and we distance ourselves from our creator and we degrade ourselves, we don't just degrade ourselves, we bring everybody else down with us. So I'll give you a great example of this from the Torah, and then we'll stop. A great example of this is in the Torah. It says that by the times of Noah, we know that the world was destroyed in the times of Noah because the world had become incredibly corrupt. Immorality of every form was rampant. Sexual immorality, thievery, everything was good. Idolatry. Human beings had descended from 10 generations from Adam to Noah. And by the time the generation of Noah, the 10th generation of mankind had become so corrupt that Hashem had to destroy the world because of the sexual morality and the idolatry and everything. But it says, the verse says in Parshas Noach, it says, Ki hishchis kol basar es darka al haaretz. All flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth, meaning not just human beings. Rashi, quoting the Talmud, says that even animals began acting with sexual immorality during the times of Noah. They were mating with other species, which is something that animals don't do naturally. Okay, and that even the animals were acting immoral. Now, the question that everybody has about this is that doesn't seem to make sense, because you can't be, like I was saying before, an animal can't act immorally because an animal doesn't have free will. An animal doesn't have a body and a soul and a spiritual side and a physical side and moral choices. Animals just do. So how can it be that the animals were acting immorally? And the only answer to that, possible answer to that question, is because humanity, human beings, have become so immoral that they degraded themselves, and in the process, they brought everything else down with them, including the animals that started acting in an immoral way. And the final piece of this is that in that very, very famous line that God says when he's creating man, he says, let us make man. Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. And all the commentaries ask right away, who are you talking to? God, let us make man. And there are a lot of different, because who's he talking to? Who's us? Who's we? Right? Who's he talking to? So the one answer is he was talking to the angels. One answer, one of my favorite answers from the Baal Shem Tov, is that he was talking to man. Let us, you and I together, will make you. I'll give you the raw materials. I'll give you all the parts that you need, but you have to make something out of that. Okay. But there's a third answer that I want to share with you. And that is that on the Kabbalistic level, when God said, let us make man, don't forget, man was the final stage in creation. Man was the last thing created in this world. So let us make man. God was speaking to the entirety of creation that existed up until that moment, right a moment prior to the creation of human beings. And God says to all of these things, the plants, the animals, everything that existed, let us make man together, meaning everything that existed prior to the existence of man, everything on earth, was required to contribute some piece of itself into the creation of man. So that in the end, mankind is created as an olam katan, as a microcosm of the universe, as a combination of all that exists in the universe prior to the existence of man. That's what it means, let us make man. And therefore, when man is degraded, when man degrades himself, when a human being distances himself from his creator, chooses the physicality, and he gets pulled into that physicality and further away from his creator, he doesn't just knock himself down and bring himself down. He brings all of creation and all of humanity down with him, because he is a microcosm of everything that exists in the world, because everything that exists in the world exists within him. Okay, and that's how the animals can begin to act in an immoral way. More on this topic next week. but I want to hold here and see if anybody has any thoughts, comments, questions that they would like to share.
David, you
Yes.
didn't answer about where does pleasure stack up in the 6 things that the heavenly court asked?
Oh, so it's not on the list of, well, actually, one of them is, did you engage in procreation, right? Did you attempt to asakta priya? Did you engage in attempting? Now, not everybody's, we know obviously life is not simple and not everybody's able to have children. That's not the question, is not did you have children? The question is, did you try? Did you make the effort? So but that's not talking about did you enjoy the physical pleasure of sexuality. That was more about, did you try to, create future generations to pass on morality? So it's, the actual, did you enjoy the physical pleasure part is not one of the 6 in the final exam.
Okay, where do I find the 6 questions?
It's in the tractate of Shabbat, and I believe it's somewhere in the 30s. I'll find it for you. It's like 30, 31, 32, I think. Shabbat 31, 32 in the Babylonian Talmud.
Thank you.
The 6. You can Google the 6 questions, Babylonian Talmud tractate Shabbat. I think it's 31A or 31B.
Okay.
But the Jerusalem Talmud does make the statement, which I quoted earlier, which is that we are going to be accountable for not having taste. I love this story. I'm sure I've told it a million times, but it's a great story about this Rosh Yeshiva that had the dean of one of the yeshivas, who decided he and his wife were going to go to Switzerland. And when the students asked him, what's going on, Rabbi? Is there a conference, a rabbinical conference? Is there a yeshiva conference over there with Rosh Yeshivas? He goes, no, we're going to see the Alps. So what, Rabbi? Like, this was a guy who never, wasted a minute of Torah learning. What do you mean you're going to go see the Alps? So he said, yeah, because I know when I get to Shemayim, Hashem is going to ask me, so new, Yankala, I made these beautiful Alps. Did you ever go bother to see them? And I don't want to have to say no, right? So I've told that story to my kids since they were like little babies. They've heard me tell the story 1,000 times. So right before, when Levi was just in town on his way to come to Chicago, he and Yoli Margolis stopped in Switzerland for 3 days, and he called me. He FaceTimed me from the Alps, and he goes, Abba, I did it. I saw the Alps. I can answer yes. But that's part of life, is enjoying. But how and in what parameters and with what perspective am I enjoying life? Shabbos is really a great example. Of course, Shabbos is amazing. The herring and the cholent and the potato kogel, and Yosef makes great chicken and salmon and all this stuff. In Israel, you have crazy. I mean, every supermarket there have these olive bars. And they're these. It's just, and it's cheap. It's amazing. Wine, delicious wine. Oh, I think there's 400 wineries in Israel now. 400 wineries in this tiny little country. The wine is delicious, and cheap. So you got to enjoy all those things. But if Shabbos becomes all about the wine or the food or the cholent, you failed, right? And it does, by the way. It does. There are whole, groups of guys, Kiddush clubs, where, they sneak out from davening a little early, and they go and, well, Steve can tell you how it works. I've never been, but they go and they're called JFKs. The JFKs?
No.
Just for Kiddush, they come JFK just for Kiddush.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. All right. What else?
David, at the beginning, you said you'll be judged, excuse me, on what you see and how you react to it. Okay, is that correct?
I don't know if I said that. No, I didn't say that.
Nice talking.
What were you?
to
No,
Well,
what did you? What were you referencing? I didn't say that exactly.
I don't know. I thought, you
You're
said
talking about what I
you were
said.
talking
when I said
about
you're
the
gonna be held
tornadoes
accountable.
and everything. You were talking about the tornadoes and, what you see versus
Yes.
how you react
Yes.
to it. Okay,
Trying
So-
that everything exists, everything that exists in life is there for us to grow closer to Hashem from. How do we understand things? How do we interpret things? How do we look at things? What lesson,
Right.
what message do we take from? Yeah,
right.
that I said.
So would Hashem expect you to get in the car, drive to Edwardsville to try and help, with the search or with the cleanup? And if you fall short of that, how do you know what the right expectations are and the right things to do?
That's a good question. I mean, that, by the way, sounds like a reasonable thing to do for someone who can. If they're asking for volunteers, for people to help clear the rubble, I don't know if they are, if they're not, but if they are, that's actually could be a meaningful thing and a helpful way to, contribute. Or maybe they set up a GoFundMe for the families who lost their homes and lost everything, but something where you feel more connected to it, and also just like, what am I supposed to take away? I mean, I know, like last night I was kind of like shaking. I'm like, I said to Ali last night, like, in Israel, we don't, in Jerusalem, we don't have tornadoes, we don't have hurricanes, but they are saying, God forbid, but they're saying that, every 100 years there is a massive earthquake in Israel. Israel's right on a fault line, and there hasn't been one for over 100 years. And, and they're kind of saying like, that this is something that, realistically could and probably will happen sometime soon, and like, you think about that and you think about like, wow, did I, have I, are there things I need to do? Are there people I need to talk to? Are there, life could end, even if the only thing you walk away from that horrible natural disaster with is a heightened awareness that life can end unexpectedly, instantaneously, and that, that if there are things that are not in order that you need to put in order, you should do them right away. That's learning something, growing in some way from that event, that experience. Yeah. All right, my dear friends. Great to see everybody. And we will.
A great class, David. Very, very penetrating.
Great. Thank you. Steve and Melissa, can you guys stay on for a second? I need to ask you something. Okay. All right.
See everybody.
Be well, everybody.
Have a good
great
week.
week. Shavua tov.